I had one hand on Marcus's desk when Oliver rounded the row and saw the paper in my fingers. Fear tightened my throat before I could move. He froze, eyes on the envelope, then his hand closed around it, and he shoved it into his jacket pocket like he meant to deliver it. "Sorry," he said, half smile, acting casual in the glow of the overhead lamps. The office felt too small in that instant. The conflict was immediate. If Marcus saw the letter, his reputation could be questioned. If Oliver delivered it, the rumor mill would begin. I pulled my hand back and kept my breathing measured. I write this now because the memory of that scrape, the scrape of a pocket closing over paper, is what drove the choices of that night. Longing pushed me to place the letter where he would find it. Fear me to hide it. I folded both feelings into a single decision and sat with the weight of it on my lap. I am Evelyn Hart. I keep lists in a worn leather notebook and make tea on the false bottom of my cabinet when no one watches. I work here because the work matters. Marcus keeps the office steady. People come to him with problems and leave with plans. My presence in his team is ordinary, measured, and necessary, and that ordinary life is what I wanted to protect when I wrote the letter. Oliver's hand was still on his jacket pocket. He glanced at me, then at the empty desk, then at the corridor where Marcus's office door was. "I thought it was inter-office mail," he said. His voice had the ready note of someone who expects to be forgiven. I stepped closer because proximity buys time. "It's not," I said. My voice was low. I reached out and tapped the front of his jacket. "Give it back, please." He hesitated. He turned his face toward the fluorescent strip of the printer nook and offered me a distracted smile. "Marcus, he's not in. I can leave it on his desk tomorrow." That was an argument dressed in helpfulness. He didn't know the risk he carried. I moved faster. I took his wrist with 2 fingers and pulled the fabric of his sleeve away. The envelope crinkled against his palm. My fingers brushed the edge. Oliver forgot his composure for a fraction. He laughed too loud, the sound bouncing off the printer and the pale corporate posters. "Evelyn, right, you okay?" Late night, he my name like a label and then turned his head away, the envelope still between his fingers. An outside knock on the corridor door, a soft, precise knock, announced Marcus returning from meetings. The sound was a new event. The rhythm of the night changed. Oliver's jaw tightened. He shoved the envelope into his pocket harder and started down the corridor before I could reach him. I pursued him. Fear shifted into urgency. I wasn't running because of shame. I was running because the office balance depended on a rumor staying buried. Evidence in a man's hand could be reshaped into favor or impropriety by the wrong listener. That was the real danger. Not my feelings, but the fallout those feelings might cause for Marcus and for the people who relied on him. The corridor smelled like cold coffee and dry carpet. Mies. Patel's office light was on at the end, its door slightly ajar. I caught my reflection in the glass wall, shoulder-length chestnut waves, a silver locket at my throat, my freckle catching the amber lamp. I stepped around a cluster of files and kept my head down. Marcus came into view then, back from the stairwell, shoulders rigid, phone in hand. He didn't look surprised to see me. He looked like a man who processes interruptions and files them away. He passed within arm's reach. Our eyes met for a moment. He gave a small, unreadable nod and kept moving. "Marcus," I said too quickly. The word left me like a small plea. He slowed and turned. "Marcus, He stopped with his hand on the corridor rail. "Evelyn," he pronounced my name like a report. He glanced past me at the row of desks and then at the printer nook. I tightened my grip on the invisible letter in my chest. "Everything okay?" His voice asked, not accusing but scanning for disruption. His mouth was steady. His hands steepled behind his back for a second, then relaxed. He kept his professional mask on even when something fragile hovered between us. Before I could answer, Oliver stepped out of the printer nook, as if emerging from a different scene. His jacket was crooked, his smile still ready. "Marcus, there's a note that was left by the printer. Figured I'd drop it on your desk tomorrow." He gestured as if he offered help. Marcus's gaze flicked to Oliver's jacket. "Leave it on my desk." "Marcus." His voice was measured. It didn't invite questions. He looked at me with a low, steady gaze and then left down the hall toward his office. I watched him go and felt my pulse unsheath into something raw. I did not follow Marcus. I let him go back to the steady, organized place where decisions were made and questions were asked. Instead, I slipped into her office because the glass wall offered a view without exposing me. From that angle I could see Claire inside, her hands on a folder, voice clipped as she spoke to no one I could see. The hard door was closed but not locked. I had not planned to overhear anything, and yet the cadence of Claire's voice carried concern about perceived favoritism. She said, "We need a statement. Marcus will need to come in." The words landed on me with the bluntness of an order. My stomach dropped. Favoritism, reputation, the exact words I feared. I backed away from the glass. Fear shifted again, this time into a prickling shame and a cold clarity. If anyone believed there was a pattern, Marcus's careful steadiness could be interpreted as partiality. If that happened, other people's jobs could wobble. I had written the letter to lay out what I could not say aloud. I had not written it to be evidence. An event occurred that snapped me back into action. Miss Pattle's office light clicked on and she stepped into the corridor, phone in hand. Her eyes scanned the team quickly. She stopped at me. "Evelyn," she said. Her tone was practical. "Stay late." "Miss Pattle, I started, then stopped. I did not want to reveal anything." She inclined her head once, a warning glance that carried more than the words. She did not ask me to explain. She didn't have to. I returned to my desk and opened my drawer. The office lamp threw a warm amber pool across the wood. The letter I had written lay folded inside my notebook where I'd slid it earlier, edges neat. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted it. Longing settled across my fingers in a different shape than before. It was not the shy ache I kept at home. It was a responsibility I had chosen. I sat and wrote a second line across the top of the page. "Do not deliver. Preserve what is needed." I heard the printer whir and then stop. Oliver passed by the glass coffee station, his steps light. He pressed the elevator button and waited. The office moved with small, decisive noises. A keyboard click, a coffee tap, the faint hum of the havoc. Those small noises could be rearranged into gossip if someone decided to press them into a story. I printed a duplicate of the monthly report I was cross-checking and used it to cover the letter on my desk. Practical measures felt like armor. I placed my thin gold watch in plain sight and opened my notebook to a list of tomorrow's tasks. Action calmed me. A new event arrived. Claire's shadow through the glass indicated she had finished the meeting. She stepped out and called Marcus's name softly. I saw his profile through the slatted blinds as he entered the room. Their conversation was formal. Claire read from a printed note and Marcus answered in short sentences. I could not hear everything. I could see his jaw work the way it does when he contains a reaction. I left my desk, supposedly to refill my tea. In the break area, I found Oliver riffling through the interoffice mail tray. He lifted a sealed envelope and smiled to himself like a man with a small prize. My heart accelerated into a clearer fear. He had taken the letter from the printer and assumed it was routine. He didn't know the content. He didn't know how easily a single misdelivered note could be recast as something else. I cut across the floor and said, "Oliver, can you give me that?" My voice had a flat edge. He looked at me with a little irritation. "Evelyn, I'm trying to help. Can't you just—" "Please," I said. The word was short. I reached for his hand but stopped when he jerked his arm back. He tucked the envelope under a stack of magazines and straightened up. "I'm leaving it on his desk in the morning," he said. "No harm done." A small, surprising brightness came into his expression, the belief that he had performed a civic duty. He didn't see the hazard. We argued then, only for 3 minutes, 4 exchanges that sounded like a rehearsed disagreement. "Oliver, you can't," I began. "You need to understand," he interrupted. "Evelyn. Seriously, this is nothing. Marcus's assistant always leaves notes. Relax." He used my name like a label again. Our rapid back and forth changed the rhythm in the break area. 2 other colleagues looked over. Miss Pattle stepped near the doorway and narrowed her eyes at the edge of our exchange. She did not intervene, but the presence of a third party raised the stakes. People began to form quiet hypotheses. My hands found the envelope when Oliver hesitated to pull it out. I didn't take it by force. I moved calmly, fingers slipping under the flap and lifting the paper. He made a small, resigned sound and stepped back. I slipped the envelope into my bag as if it were nothing. That was a minor victory, but the event left a new chip of anxiety lodged under my sternum. Oliver had seen me retrieve it. Someone else might have seen his hand on it earlier. The elevator bell chimed. Marcus emerged. He looked between us, then at my bag. His eyebrows rose once everything settled, he asked. His voice carried the steadiness that leads people to trust him. Yes, I said. My voice was controlled. I kept my eyes down for a moment and then looked up. Yes, Marcus. It's fine, he gave a brief nod. Good. Take care, Evelyn. He turned and walked away, but his shoulders had a small tension to them that I felt in my own chest. Later, when the office thinned and the fluorescent lights hummed softer, I sat at my desk and wrote. The letter was not long, it was precise, it listed small things. The mornings I made his coffee when he stayed late, the Tuesday he stayed to help a junior deliver a presentation, the time he hid a damp umbrella in the umbrella stand for someone who left theirs behind. Those were the facts. I wrote them because facts cannot be spun into rumor without someone willing to bend them. I signed the letter with my full name and folded it twice. Then I walked to the printer area and set the sealed envelope where a routine mail delivery might find it in the morning. I told myself I would let it be a small, quiet truth placed for him alone. I stepped away and walked back to my desk. My hands were still warm from handling the paper. A new, sharp event intervened. Oliver returned to the printer nook, breathless as if he'd run. Evelyn, he said, voice thin, there's some her chatter. Claire Marcus to come in about favoritism. Someone filed something. He met my eyes then, and for a second his voice lost its practiced lightness. They might need statements. I froze. Emotion shifted from cautious resolve into something colder. Shame that my private note might be the thing that tipped conversation into policy. My fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. I needed to act. Who filed it? I asked. My question was a tool, not a confession. Oliver shrugged and stepped away. I don't know. Claire sounded worried. Marcus went in. He rubbed his forehead. This is messy. I walked back to her door and listened at the glass. I couldn't hear words clearly, but I could see Claire's mouth and Marcus's hands. He leaned forward, palms flat on the table, and spoke in shorter sentences. She read a printed note and slid it across. He folded the paper and did not look surprised. I watched his thumb smooth the corner of the sheet. My next move was deliberate. I chose to preserve his standing rather than force my own clarity. I would not collect the paper and expose my name to speculation. I would not give the office a story it could tell in whispers. That was the choice I had promised myself when I placed the note on his desk. I left the corridor and walked toward the elevator lobby because I needed to intercept Oliver before morning. He was already there, waiting with the envelope in his jacket again. The lobby lights were warmer near the lobby lanterns, but the air between us felt thin. Oliver, I said, give it to me now. Please. My voice did not beg, but it contained the exhaustion of someone who had been making small sacrifices all evening. He handed over the envelope at first, then clutched it to his chest. I was only trying to help, he said. I didn't mean. I stepped closer until our shoulders almost touched. The physical closeness tightened something between us. Then Marcus arrived at the far end of the lobby. The elevator doors opened behind him. He saw us. The scene snapped into the climax. Oliver tried to step past me. I reached for the envelope, and Marcus's presence folded the moment into public. My fingers closed on the flap as Oliver's thumb brushed it. He jerked his arm back. Marcus's voice cut through like a new instrument. What's going on here? The three of us froze. My pulse hammered against my ribs. I felt the muscles in my jaw clench. My throat made small involuntary sounds. Marcus, it's fine. Oliver, too quickly. He tried to give a line about interoffice mail and routine delivery. His explanation collapsed under the tension. Marcus took a step forward. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Evelyn, Oliver, he said. He named us both like a ledger. Is there an issue? I could have handed him the envelope then. I could have let my name be attached to what I had written. But I saw the way Claire had read her note earlier and the way Marcus had folded it as if it required containment. I thought of the juniors who depended on him, of the schedules that would be unsettled if rumor found a foothold in the room. I withdrew my hand instead and let the envelope hide in my bag. No, I said. My voice was small and steady. I let my shoulders slope in a way that said there was no crisis, no Marcus. Nothing here. Marcus regarded me for a long moment. He stepped closer so that his presence eased the corridor rather than pressured it. He did not ask to see the envelope. He did not ask who had it. He gave a single, almost invisible nod and then turned toward the elevators. "Get home, both of you," he said. After he left, Oliver exhaled a sound that could have been anger or relief. He looked at me and said, "You could have just given it to him. Why hide it?" "Because I know what a rumor will do," I said. "Because the note is mine, and because I do not want to make his name part of a conversation that could damage people." He blinked. "Evelyn, are you serious?" Yes, we had a short argument then, a rapid exchange of lines that made the air between us smaller. His voice was higher, mine remained contained. The argument did not last long. It shifted the room and left a new, brittle quiet. I asked for a conference room because I needed privacy away from the hall. Marcus led me into the smallest one that had no nameplate. We closed the door. The room smelled like lemon cleaner. The table was cold under my palms. He sat across from me and steepled his fingers. "Evelyn, are you all right?" He asked. "Marcus, I wrote a letter. I put it where you might find it. I also left it folded and sealed. I didn't want it to become evidence for anything that could be misread." My sentences were clipped. Each one held a small, precise reason. He studied me. "Why would you do that?" "Because I couldn't say it without risking your reputation. Because I couldn't make people question your decisions. Because other people depend on you and I couldn't let my confession become a lever." I breathed a little between phrases to keep from speaking too fast. Marcus's jaw loosened. He did not look shocked. He looked contemplative in a practical way. "Evelyn," he said, "you shouldn't do things that endanger the team, I know." I watched the quick tightening of his mouth when he measured the word danger. I made a choice to protect what matters here. He leaned back. "Protecting doesn't mean hiding things from me." "It does in this case," I replied. "If I handed you the letter, you'd have to respond in front of Claire and Memes. Patel, they'd ask questions. It would drag others into this." I couldn't risk that. He stayed silent for a moment and then asked, "Do you want me to know?" The question made my fingers fidget with the edge of the table. I could feel the old ache of wanting to explain everything and of choosing not to. "Marcus, I wanted to tell you, but only if it could be without consequences for you." I decided that wasn't possible. He rubbed his temple. "Evelyn, this isn't fair to either of us." "I know." The words were small and final. We stood in the conference room in a quiet that was not empty. I could feel a shift inside me. Longing softened into resignation, and resignation hardened into a new kind of resolve. I had chosen restraint. That choice now defined the plate I carried. When I left the conference room, the floor was nearly empty. The security guard nodded at me as he passed. I went back to my desk and slid the sealed letter into the locked drawer. The lock clicked in a sound that felt louder than it should. I turned the key twice and then held the drawer closed with both hands for a moment, feeling the cool metal against my palms. I did not write explanations. I did not leave instructions. I left only the letter and a single line in my notebook. For Marcus Reed, not to be handed over. The final event of the night was small and precise. As I stood, Ms. Patel passed my desk and looked down at the drawer. She did not say anything. She only gave me the same look she'd given me earlier, a warning folded into care. Then she went to the elevator and left. I locked my bag, took my coat, and walked to the lobby. Outside, the air was colder. I slid my hands into my pockets and kept my head down. When Marcus passed the front desk on his way out, he did not stop. He did not look back. At home that night, I made chamomile tea and placed the kettle on the stove. The rituals were small. The click of the kettle, the soft paper of the tea bag, the careful tightening of the lid. The letter stayed in its drawer at the office, a sealed pocket of truth I had chosen to protect by hiding it rather than revealing it. I write this as a letter because some truths lie better on paper than in conversation. I do not expect an answer. I do not expect reprisal. I expect only that I made a choice and that the consequences of that choice will unfold without me pulling at them. I folded this page twice and felt the crease under my fingertips the way I felt the lock of the drawer in my palm. Outside, the city breathed in neon and car doors closing. Inside, I kept my hands empty. I chose to leave the letter where it would not hurt the steady work of others. That is the end of what I did that night. The drawer clicked once more in my memory, a final, concrete sound. I closed this account with the same small, decisive motion. The office lamp would throw its warm amber pool across the wood tomorrow, and somewhere in that pool a sealed envelope would sit, waiting for Marcus to find it on his terms if he ever did. I left the lamp on in my mind and walked away. Oliver crossed the floor holding a folded envelope and barked, "Whose is this?" Fear pricked my throat the way cold chamomile pricks my tongue, sharp and immediate, so I let my fingers go limp and tried to look like any other surprised colleague. The envelope hung in the air between Oliver and Marcus's desk, the printed name on the outside catching the office fluorescent and throwing a white flash at everyone's faces. The central problem was visible. A written confession or a scandal, clear enough that Claire from her would call for statements and Jonas would smell an opportunity to unsettle people. I could not breathe around the sound of every chair shifting toward us. I have been careful with my face all week, because a face says things a letter keeps hidden, and I had slipped a folded page, my page, toward Marcus's desk the night before. Fear pressed against my ribs, so I pinned it down with the tip of my thumb and kept my mouth closed. Marcus reached for the envelope as if to take it, but Oliver shoved it back like a hot object. "Whose handwriting is this?" Oliver demanded again, eyes fixed on me. I heard my own name somewhere in the ripple of the room. The word hit the air like a small stone. The opening seconds deposited everyone into a problem. A paper that could be read aloud and change careers, reputations, and friendships. Claire arrived before the hum of gossip could become a roar. She set her tablet on Marcus's desk, fingers tapping in short, brisk beats. "We treat this formally," she said, eyes on Marcus. "If it's personal correspondence that affects the workplace, I need statements." I felt my breathing shorten. Fear shifted into a second current shame when Oliver stepped forward and looked at me with the accusation already on his face. "Evelyn?" he asked as if a single syllable could force a confession. I kept quiet. My hands folded the hem of my scarf until fabric gathered at my knuckles. Marcus's voice came then, even low. "Enough, Oliver. We'll talk private." His hand rose between us, a physical boundary. Marcus's motion changed the room. He steepled his fingers briefly and then said, "Claire, please wait a moment." The demand reduced the immediate volume of insults. He had the habit of softening a crowd by holding still in the middle of it. People moved back, but the eyes remained like moths pinned to the light. "Marcus, my name softly. Evelyn, come with me." I felt the office tilt toward containment. The problem had moved from public space into something that could be handled. We walked toward his private office with the envelope between us like a measured weight. On the way, Jonas blocked my path in the file corridor, smiling thin and quick. "Nice handwriting," he said, and I felt a new, sharp heat climb my neck. He gestured at the paper in Marcus's hand. "You two always have secrets, don't you?" Jonas's voice carried a relish for having new leverage. I moved around him. "Jonas, let us pass." Marcus, calm and cold. Jonas stepped aside, but didn't release the smile that said the matter was not done. Claire's voice carried through the glass as she opened the conference room door. "If there's potential for a formal inquiry, I will handle it," she announced. Her tone was not accusing. Hers was the voice of policy. She began outlining the steps. Written statements, a meeting, temporary reassignment if necessary. Each step made the stakes clear and technical, a clinical escalation. The office quieted in reaction to procedure. Inside Marcus's office, he set the envelope on his desk and closed his fingers over it. The room smelled of cedar and black coffee. Marcus's watch flashed when he checked the time. He did not open the paper immediately. Instead, he looked at me the way he looked at any problem that required both restraint and a decision. Steady weighing. "Claire will run this through the process. For now, keep this quiet." I handed my folded scarf to my arm to steady my shaking. Fear softened into a new motion. Calculation. I had choices. Confess and break the balance. Let the letter be read and risk Marcus's position. Or accept a private solution that would mean silence. Marcus watched my hands and then said, "Evelyn, tell me exactly where you left that paper." I said the truth. "On the left corner of your desk, under the blotter." I meant it to stay private. Marcus's eyes tightened. "Private doesn't exist in an open plan office," he said. He lifted the envelope, turned it so the sealed flap faced him. "You keep your feelings in writing and place them where anyone can find them." There was no accusation in the tone, only a statement of fact. "Did you tell anyone else?" I hesitated and felt the second emotion shift. from calculation to dread. Saying yes would make the matter worse. Saying no might be a lie. No, I whispered. He put the envelope into his inside desk drawer and closed it without a click. Silence filled the space between us. Marcus then went through a litany of potential consequences with the practicality of someone pointing out items on a checklist. He will ask questions. Rumors will spread. The team will fracture if trust dissolves. You understood that when you wrote it. I felt his words like a ledger being balanced. Marcus proposed a containment. He will handle this quietly and formally. You'll write a short statement to her, and I'll explain that the note was personal and unshared. His plan drew the line he wanted. Truth kept to a few statements that preserved office function. That was relief, sudden and immediate. Fear eased into relief as his stance promised to prevent spectacle. But relief sat lightly. It was temporary against Jonas and Oliver, who were ready to fan the spark into flame. Claire paced outside Marcus's door with her tablet, fingers moving along the screen. I need names and a timeline, she said when we came out. Her tone was procedural, but I felt the layer of judgment beneath. Oliver hovered, looking for a moment to puncture any protective measures with a revealing question. Why would anyone leave a letter on Marcus's desk? He asked, loud enough for people to hear. Jonas laughed softly. Maybe it's a resignation wrapped in paper. At lunch, the office felt like a waiting room. Colleagues made small talk that had edges. Marcus stayed close to his desk and moved with a low, careful gaze. He intercepted anyone who tried to ask pointed questions. Jonas made a point of bringing coffee to the floor, and then standing by the file cabinets to trade gossip. Oliver sat near the printers and kept glancing at his phone. Each of their motions pulled me in different directions. Oliver's aggression invited confrontation. Jonas's opportunism suggested exposure. Claire's procedure meant potential formal consequences. During the late morning lull, I slipped toward the archive where old client files were kept. My plan was simple. Locate the second copy of the day planner where I'd tucked the original draft and, if necessary, retrieve it before Jonas could. Fear returned as I moved between tall metal shelves, but this time it came with a focused edge. I had made the note to preserve what I could not say. I would keep that paper away from the world. Footsteps slowed behind me. A shadow fell across the file labels. Jonas stepped into the narrow aisle and smiled. Evelyn. He reached out and brushed the file spine in a casual, deliberate way. Funny seeing you here. His hand found an old folder and pulled it out as if searching. He moved the folder so the label showed my name on past reports. You couldn't resist leaving something, could you? He said. His tone was a trap. He held the folder between us like evidence. Jonas, this isn't yours, I said. My voice was small but direct. Please leave me alone. Jonas's smile shifted, less an expression than a calculation. I know your handwriting, he said quietly. He tapped his thumb against the folder's edge. You should be careful, Evelyn. People like stories. This reveal changed the stakes. Jonas now had motive and recognition. His knowledge converted private risk into a threat. My fear moved into a new form, exposure. I felt my jaw clench. How do you know my handwriting? I asked. He shrugged then, which was worse than an answer. Have you seen notes? Supply orders? Your scribbles in the break room ledger? His eyes were casual. Don't make me the only one who sees this. I pulled back and kept my voice steady. You'd be doing a lot to make this public, I said. I named the possible consequences out loud, or statements, reputations damaged. Jonas' expression never changed. Everything has a price, he said. Sometimes it's entertainment. He moved away, leaving the folder on the shelf. The action delivered a threat without spectacle. I walked back to Marcus's office with my shoulders tense. Marcus looked up when I entered. He had closed the blinds, which made the room feel smaller and private. He recognized your handwriting, I said immediately. Each word tipped the balance toward a new complication. Marcus's fingers tightened on his pen. Show me which notes he saw, he asked. I handed him the copy from my notebook and watched his face. He read 3 lines, then folded the page and put it aside. Marcus made decisions quickly when there was risk to the team. He called Claire and said, "We want the inquiry limited. No company, wide statement. A private interview with Evelyn and a confidential memo." Claire agreed to come by the office and said she would mark the matter as high sensitivity. Marcus then looked at me and said, "If Jonas or Oliver push this, we will control the narrative. I will speak for the team." His words offered shelter again. I felt relief, like a sudden warmth behind my collarbone. One of the emotion shifts. Dread had become relief. Relief might become guarded calm. The afternoon changed with an event that no one expected. Jonas stood in the open floor and placed the envelope on a conference chair as if nonchalant. "Open it then," he said, loud enough that people stopped typing. He looked at the gathered group and tapped the envelope with a finger. Claire's head snapped up. Oliver strode forward. "Don't touch that, Marcus." His voice cut through the murmurs and landed on Jonas like a command. Jonas smiled as if daring Marcus to act. The room stretched toward a confrontation. I stepped forward because someone had to. "Jonas, stop this," I said. My voice held more edge than it had that morning. "If you read that paper, you hurt us all." Jonas laughed. "You already hurt yourself, Evelyn." He dug his fingernail into the envelope and slid it open. A chorus of breaths inhaled. My hands found my scarf and twisted. Jonas pulled a sheet out and read. The sentence structure was mine. A phrase I had written came alive in the fluorescent light. He grinned and then, with the exact cruelty of someone who has won a game, read the first line aloud. "Marcus, I have loved you quietly for years." The words hung in the room. A dozen necks snapped toward Marcus. Oliver's mouth opened. Claire's eyes narrowed into a thin line of procedure. Marcus remained still. The moment was the mini cliffhanger. Would Marcus defend me publicly? Would he stand aside and let her proceed? The gathered room waited for his motion. Marcus did not rush. He crossed the office floor slowly, took the paper from Jonas's hand, and read it without expression. When he finished, he folded the page and slid it into his palm. "Jonas, that's enough," he said. His voice had the economy of someone ending an argument by making a decision. Jonas smirked. "Or what, Marcus? You hide it. You tell her it was private and keep your star employees safe." He tossed the accusation like a challenge. Marcus looked back at me and then at Claire. "We will handle this internally," he said. "Claire, the procedural questions necessary for her record," and Marcus answered. "Evelyn will provide a statement." "We'll keep the matter confidential," Claire typed. Jonas's jaw tightened, but he did not escalate on the floor. Afterwards, Marcus closed his office door and set the envelope in his top drawer. He did not lock it, but the drawer was not obvious, and he slid his hand over it like a seal. The gesture was both protective and marked. He had contained the immediate fallout. He sat down opposite me and removed his watch. "You understand why this matters in a workplace," he said. I nodded. "I wanted to keep the team intact," I said. My voice did not shake. Marcus leaned forward. "Hey, Evelyn," he said. "I don't want the team punished for what you wrote." He spoke plainly. "I will accept some costs to keep people safe, but you must be willing to make a small, private choice too." I waited. He added, "Write what her needs. Keep it factual. Let me answer any questions about why we kept it confidential. I will not let this become a spectacle." I could have asked him then to stay, to say what I wanted out loud. Instead, I measured the cost. Saying my feelings would change his role in the office, make him an object of pity or gossip, and unravel the calm he kept. That calculation, restraint over confession, was the central motive of my life in the office. I picked the short sentence that protected him. "I'll do it," I said. I wrote the concise note to her later that afternoon, stating facts without the heart of the letter. Claire read it and nodded. "This will be filed," she said. That night I returned to my desk after most people had left. The lamp cast a warm amber pool over my worn leather notebook. My hands were steady as I opened to the page where I'd tucked the original draft. I wrote a short postscript. "This is mine. Keep it between us if you can." I pressed the paper flat and slid it into the notebook's inner pocket. Then I closed the cover. The emotion shift settled. Fear had moved through shame and dread into a quiet acceptance held in action rather than declaration. I left Marcus's office earlier than I wanted. As I shut the building door behind me, I felt the day's events contract into the small weight of paper under my scarf. Marcus had chosen to protect the team and to shoulder the administrative burden. Jonas had found a taste for leverage and not yet used it fully. Oliver still paced with the need to expose. Claire had done her duty by procedure. Each person had altered the path in a way that mattered. When I reached home, I set my notebook on the kitchen table and ran my thumb along the envelope's flap once more. I did not open it. I folded the scarf tighter and then, Because I needed a ritual that was mine, I placed the notebook into my bag and slid it under the worn leather strap. The concrete action sealed the day's choices. The letter remained unread by all but me, and the sealed office drawer Marcus had touched. I do not know what Jonas will do tomorrow. I do not know whether Oliver will find a way to force a public reading. For tonight, the office had leaned toward containment. My decision to keep the letter private had not erased the risk, but it had limited the immediate damage. I sat at my kitchen table and wrote nothing more. The final act of the chapter was simple and deliberate. I closed the notebook and slid the original letter into its inner pocket, feeling the paper's edges beneath my fingers once more. Outside the window, the streetlight threw a warm amber band across the pavement. I locked my apartment door, and the key made a single, definite sound. I did not write a farewell or a plea. I made a choice to preserve what I could and to accept the cost of silence. I left the notebook on the chair beside me and put my hands around a cup of chamomile. The last thing I did that evening was return the sheet to its safe, soft place inside that notebook, and lay the closed book on my lap, the paper still warm from my palm. I will keep what I wrote. I will be careful with the words I add from now on. The chapter ends with a small, physical gesture. I slid the notebook into my bag and zipped it closed, feeling the zipper catch once, a small, decisive sound that matched the way Marcus had closed his drawer earlier. That zipper's final click was the day's last event, an action that tied the whole morning and evening into one contained moment. Marcus's hand closed on the banister above mine before I could slide the envelope under the office door. Longing tightened my throat the way a lid clamps on a jar. That longing had kept me careful for months, and it was the reason I had come back tonight with one last page folded so small it fit inside my palm. I had planned the movement, down 3 flights of service stairs, along the dim corridor, a gentle slip beneath the door where his desk light pooled. Instead, Marcus stood at the landing, coat still on, his shoe heel angled toward the stair as if he had just changed his mind about leaving. Evelyn, what are you doing here? And his voice cut through the stairwell quiet like a key through soft paper. The immediate problem was obvious. I was out of hours, with a personal letter that should not be read and colleagues who should not know. The stakes were the same as the morning note, and the envelope Oliver had held up during the day. The risk now felt sharper because the confession inside this paper was final. My hands went light on the envelope. I put it flat between my palms and met Marcus's gaze. "I forgot something on your desk," I heard myself say. The sentence was simple. My mouth tasted of chamomile and paper. Marcus's eyes narrowed the smallest fraction. "Don't leave this under anyone's door. Come on, let's go inside." His hand did not touch mine. He only stepped back and motioned with his shoulder toward the office corridor. We crossed the landing. His jacket brushed my sleeve. My heart shifted from longing to a sudden, hot fear when I saw Oliver's silhouette appear at the foot of the stair, carrying a folder and the kind of cheerful impatience that always became trouble at bad timing. Oliver's head tipped, then he saw us and stopped as if someone had thrown a bucket of cold water. "Evelyn, why are you at Marcus's door?" And his tone held a public edge that made my throat close. Within those first steps, I had a clear decision to make. I could hand Marcus the envelope and trust him to keep it sealed, or I could swallow the confession and walk away. Longing pushed me to the first choice. Fear pushed me to the second. I chose a middle path I had practiced for years, restraint couched as an appeal to discretion. "It's personal," I said. I folded my hands around the paper tighter so Oliver could see I had nothing to hide. "Marcus, could you hold it sealed for me? Don't read it." "Not now." My voice was steady but small. Marcus took the envelope from my hands with the flat, precise motion I had learned to read as control. He did not open it. He turned it between his palms, registering the handwriting. Oliver crossed the floor, closer now, jaw working. The stairwell air held the faint scent of cleaning detergent and Marcus's cedarwood presence. Claire came up behind Oliver with a stack of end-of-day files, the corridor light catching on the metal binder clips. She saw the envelope in Marcus's hand and paused. The paper had the same slanted script the office had been whispering about since morning. "Claire, that's the handwriting from this morning's note, isn't it?" Her voice dropped into the sort of sharp curiosity that spreads like a stain across a room. My first emotional shift, from longing to fear, happened within the first minute Marcus touched the paper. The second shift moved me toward defiance as Claire and Oliver leaned forward. I said, "Please, Claire, it's private." The words were a hinge. They moved the scene from an intimate exchange to something larger and awkwardly public. Oliver's face darkened. "Private. Evelyn, earlier someone left a folded note on Marcus's desk and it caused trouble this morning. People are talking." His sentences came in small, clipped pieces, the way he always did when he wanted to push a problem into the open. "If this is related, we need to know. We can't have." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Marcus's palm covered the envelope, not close enough to crush it but enough to claim it. He looked at Oliver. "Not here, Oliver. If it matters, we'll handle it privately." His voice was low. He used my name, deliberate and soft. "Evelyn," he added, "are you all right?" I breathed, tasting cold chamomile, and realized Marcus had asked a question without forcing an admission. That steadiness shifted me again, fear blurred into a calculated calm. I answered with the small rehearsed truth. "I'm fine. I wrote something I can only say on paper. I don't want anyone else to see it." Claire's fingers tightened on her file. If it's the same handwriting, it could be a complaint. "Is someone leaving notes about work?" She looked at Marcus like she expected him to instruct a response. Claire, his name as if recalling duty. "Marcus, we should log it." Marcus's hand pressed on the envelope. He looked at Claire, then at Oliver, then back at me. The pause that followed was a small, crowded thing. Everyone lined up under it. I saw Marcus's jaw work. I had seen that jaw set before in meetings, in the morning when Oliver poked at problems, when he absorbed a mistake and turned it into a plan. If this is personal and Evelyn asks me not to read it, I'll respect that until she asks differently. "Marcus." His words were not a command but a boundary. He folded the envelope into his inner coat pocket like a secret inside a secret. That motion felt like an answer and an entire new problem. Oliver stepped closer, still irritated. "You can't just hide things, Marcus. If there's a problem at work, we need transparency." We team. Oliver's breath made a small cloud in the stairwell light. He sounded younger than his hairline suggested. Marcus's reply was flat. "If it's not a workplace problem, it stays private." Evelyn, me to keep it sealed. 3 voices. 2 stances. 1 sealed paper that had already changed the room. By the time we reached the small foyer outside Marcus's office, Claire had unwrapped her reserve and started directing her questions in the clipped, efficient way she used when a file threatened to topple a schedule. "Who else knows about this? Where did Evelyn get this paper? Why now?" she asked. And each question landed like a small stone. I said, "No one else knows. I wrote it tonight." Short sentences. No long explanations, no excuses. The truth in 2 clauses. Claire studied me. Her gaze slid to Marcus's inner coat pocket, then back to my hands. "You should put it in a drawer, Marcus. Seal it. And log that it exists. We can't have gossip interfering with work." Her voice carried the weight of procedure. That moment forced a new choice onto Marcus. He could follow Claire's demand and make the letter part of a recorded problem, or he could hold it in private on faith. His fingers curled around his briefcase handle. Then he did an unexpected thing. He pushed the door open to his office and invited me inside. "Come in, Evelyn," he said. "Close the door." "Oliver, Claire, give us a moment." He did not ask for permission. He set it. Inside the office, the light was warm and amber, the desk neat except for a leather briefcase and the soft pool of a lamp. Marcus closed the door and set the envelope on his desk as if it were a fragile object that belonged there already. The action shifted me from defensive to exposed. I felt every inch of my body bias toward shrinking. "Sit," he said. "Tell me why you wrote a letter." He kept distance between us. Hands steepled for a moment on his chest and then on the desk. His tone was straightforward. He didn't demand a confession. He asked for it. I folded my hands in my lap. The third emotional shift came then, from controlled calm into a quiet, resolute acceptance. I began to speak, and my words were small, precise sentences. I wrote because I couldn't speak without making things messy. I am not asking for anything. I am asking for dignity, for you, for this office. I didn't want to change your life or the team's rhythm. I only needed you to know, if you ever wanted to know, what I never said aloud. Marcus's mouth moved in time with my sentences. Evelyn, why keep silence at cost to yourself?" The question landed like a probe. I answered by showing him the habit he knew well, how I folded the corners of paper when thinking, and how I had always chosen restraint to keep others safe. You behaved that way when Oliver found the folded note this morning, I said. You didn't raise a scene. You kept things running. I chose the same kind of restraint for myself, naming the earlier morning incident anchored the confession to something real and shared. Marcus's expression shifted. He touched the small crescent scar on his temple without meaning to, and the motion made him look human and fragile. Then why hide it in an envelope? Marcus, because the paper keeps things finite, I said. It keeps mistakes from landing like an accusation across someone's desk. And because I wanted a record that I told the truth. Even if I never asked for a reply, my voice tightened on the last words. Marcus read the bare facts of that answer. He did not ask me to open the envelope. He put his hand over it as if feeling its weight through the paper. An external knock at the door interrupted us. Claire again, firm in the corridor. Marcus, her will want to log this. There's precedent. Claire through the door. Marcus stood. He walked to the door, placed his palm on the metal handle, then pulled his hand back and turned to face us. We will handle it in private, he told Claire, Evelyn me to respect the request. We'll talk tomorrow if necessary. His voice carried authority and a refusal to let procedure be the only language. That refusal created a ripple. Oliver's face hardened when Marcus informed him, and Claire's eyes narrowed at the suggestion of bending protocol. Oliver, I don't like secrets, Marcus. Secrets create rumors and then someone gets hurt. His tone had a small urgency that betrayed the fact he feared the unknown. Marcus answered with a slow, controlled patience. Evelyn, for discretion, I'm asking for trust. If there's a real workplace issue, we'll address it as a team. For now, this is personal. The conversation tightened around the words personal and workplace, like two sides of a scale. We sat in a cloudy pause. I felt the pressure in my ribs, the habitual steadiness of my breathing measurement. That steadiness had been my strategy for years. I also felt a tremor. The knowledge that whatever Marcus chose would change the office's contour. If he logged the letter, I would have exposed myself and altered the team's perception. If he kept it sealed, I had given him custody of something that could someday hurt him. Marcus moved from the door to the desk and, in a motion that felt decisive, used his pen to make a small notation in his planner. He then opened the bottom drawer, slid the envelope inside, and closed it. He did not read the paper. He locked the drawer with the key on his keyring and put that key in a small, plain dish on his desk. I won't read it without your permission, he said. I will keep it sealed. If you ask me to give it to her, I will do it. If you ask me to return it, I will return it. For now, it stays with me. He my name as if setting a promise. Oliver and Claire argued quietly outside the office door for a few minutes, voices low and practical. They raised concerns about precedent and risk. They were not cruel, only fearful of the ways small events could multiply. Claire, if it affects someone's performance or safety, we must know, Oliver. We can't leave this ambiguous and expect it not to leak. Their exchange forced Marcus to repeat his position. The envelope was private unless Evelyn otherwise. The cliffhanger of the middle came when Claire reached the handle, paused, and then said, If Marcus is keeping it sealed, then Evelyn should write a short note to her saying she is okay with delay. That protects Marcus and the office. The suggestion landed between us like a new requirement. I had to decide whether to sign away the last piece of my privacy in order to preserve Marcus's standing. No, I said aloud. I won't make a formal note. I don't want to make this a paper trail. I will not put this in the record. My refusal was short and firm. The room tightened. Claire stepped back from the door as if struck. Marcus looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, I won't ask you to explain why. I will keep this sealed and locked. If you change your mind, you tell me. If anything threatens you, you come to me. Understood. He used a directness that left no room for theatrics, the language of duty more than romance. I nodded. That was the last decisive exchange before the climax. The envelope sat behind the locked drawer. That lock felt like an answer and a question at once. We left the office together. Outside, the lobby lights slanted amber across the marble, and I felt the city warm against my fingers. Marcus walked me to the lobby doors and waited until the automatic closure slid them shut. He did not ask me to stay. He did not ask me for a confession. He only said, "Be careful, Evelyn," he named me with a concern I had not expected. I answered with a sentence that was neither an apology nor a plea. "I will be." "Thank you for keeping it sealed." My voice was measured. The final emotional shift moved me from urgent hope into a quiet acceptance. Restraint as protection, acceptance as a deliberate choice rather than defeat. Outside, the streetlight washed the sidewalk in warm amber. I walked away with my scarf pulled over my coat and the memory of the drawer key resting on Marcus's desk. I did not look back until I reached the curb, and when I did I saw Marcus framed against his office window, not moving, hands in his coat pockets. He lifted one hand briefly, as if about to wave, then lowered it. The scene ended with an action I could describe precisely. I reached into my bag, smoothed the corner of an old leather notebook the way I always did before I wrote, and then folded my hands into my pockets. There was no long speech. There was no spectacle. The conflict that had threatened to unravel something larger, the morning's note, Oliver's insistence on transparency, Claire's need for procedure, resolved into a guarded promise and the concrete action of a locked drawer. That was the closure I had asked for, my truth recorded in paper and kept safe by someone who understood boundaries. Later, weeks after I slipped my letter into Marcus's drawer, I would read that night's sequence and see how small choices reshaped a room. For now, the chapter closed on a single physical beat. The office door clicking shut behind me, and the amber light sliding along the pavement as I walked away. I kept my steps measured, my breathing steady, and my decision intact. I had one hand on Marcus's desk when Oliver had first rounded the row that morning. I had watched him hold a folded envelope and bark, and I had felt fear then the same way I felt it on the stairwell tonight. This time I left one final page in a locked drawer, and I left with my silence still my choice. The night swallowed my footsteps, and the letter lay sealed where Marcus had placed it, behind a lock and a promise. As I crossed the street, a car passed in warm amber headlights, and the glass reflected my profile. I felt the press of restraint in my chest as a steady thing, not a vanishing one. The story between us did not end with confessions or declarations. It ended with a concrete act, a drawer locked, a key left on a dish, a man who agreed to hold my paper without reading it. I kept walking into the night with that knowledge and the small, careful piece of a choice honored. The night finished with a final image I could name exactly. My hand closing on the strap of my bag, the sound of my shoes on wet pavement, and the stilled shape of Marcus behind his office window as the light inside went down. That specific closing, the lamp going low, the drawer sealed, was not a promise of future tenderness. It was a result. It was the resolution of the private problem for the office, and it kept intact both Marcus's dignity and mine. I did what I had set out to do. I left the letter where it could not be read without my permission, and I walked away without forcing an answer. The chapter closed on the clear action of leaving. The office door closing, the key on the desk, and my footsteps receding into the amber, lit street.